today, obviously, if you are a parent and you've been worried that something is off with your child, something is wrong. You have a child that maybe before your child is calm, your child used to be quiet, or your child used to be lively, but there's a change, right? Then you want to stay till the end of this live video. Thank you, everyone. And if you're watching the replay as well, thank you so much. What I want you to do for me is let me know in the chat, in the comments, where you're joining from as well. Yesterday we had a live. So if you missed the live, yesterday's live session, I would advise that you go back because this is a series. So this is series 2. So I'm going to be talking about my child's behavior, obviously based off questions I've been getting, and I'm responding with my live sessions to say, my child's behavior is changing and I don't know why, right? And I know that it might not be happening to everyone, but some of us do go through that, phase in life that you see that your child that maybe used to be buoyant before is no longer buoyant. Your child that used to be maybe quiet before is no longer quiet, and when we say a change, right? So it might not be a change, a one-off change. This is a change that you have noticed over time, and you know that, something is off. This is not my child. So if this looks like, something that you are currently facing at this point in time, I would, suggest and recommend that you listen and watch till the end. So I'm Tammy. I'm a parent strategist. I'm also a teen and child psychologist as well, and also a child sleep consultant. So today I'll be giving you 3 tips on what you can do to address and resolve this ongoing issue that you have with your child. So if you're joining, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you all. I see you all. Thank you. And if you're watching the replay, thank you also. And what I would also want you to do again is let me know in the comments, even if you're watching the replay, just, put it there. I want to get to know, you guys as well. Just drop it in the comment and let me know where you're joining from. So like I said, many times when we see that there's a change, in our children, maybe you just see that sudden shift in your child and you're thinking, this is unlike my child. Many times, you might be thinking, oh, is it me? Have I done something wrong? Why the change? Many times or sometimes we're always quick to, just overreact to say, oh, what's happening with you? Why this change? And for your younger one, you might maybe so worried that what is happening with my child? So I will just give you 3 tips so that you can start to troubleshoot to see what is exactly is going wrong and how can I help my child. So the first tip is pause and reflect, because many times when you see a change in your child, the child is communicating something, right? But many times we're always thinking something, maybe you've done something wrong, but many times it's a cry for help from this child. A child it doesn't just happen. I'm a psychologist. Your child will just not change behavior to say, oh, I want to be like this. I want to change, I want to be quiet if I'm like the outspoken type, or I just want to start to talk if I'm the calm child. So it's your child trying to say something to you. And as a parent, you need to pause. So the first tip is pause and start to reflect. Okay, what's happening? When did I start to observe this change? So you want to go back to say, okay, did I start to observe this change like last week, like 2 days ago, like a day ago? So you have to start to think to say, when did this change start to happen? So don't just say, oh, my child has changed. Pause and reflect. And I always recommend to my clients that it's something you also want to start to note down. Just take your paper and pen and start to write. I started to observe that my child started to, maybe, for example, for one of my clients that we worked with, she was worried that her 7-year-old was, suddenly so clingy, a child that was ordinarily very playful, jovial, and all that. But the child started to be clingy, and she's like, you know what, Tammy, I'm worried. Something is wrong. This is not my child. My child is not the clingy type. She's the one that wants to be out there, the friendly type. And by the time we took the paper and pen to say, okay, you know what, I need you to start to think, when did this start to happen? When did you start to notice this change? And she just said, you know what, Tammy, we just moved house. So on a good day, many times we're always looking into all the solutions, whereas the solution is right there in front of you. So by the time we were able to say, okay, identify a few changes to say, okay, you've moved house, the child has also moved to school, that's also a big change, right? So but if the mom, if we did not pause to reflect, wouldn't have identified that that could be a major impact in the in the lives, in a child's life. Because many times we just think as a parent, because we've moved a house, we've moved places, which will struggle, you might be thinking, oh, your children would have adapt to such a change. So you want to note that down. So number one, pause and reflect, because from that point we were able to identify that, okay, this is it. And by the time we notice, you will notice that how best are we able to support this child with this change. So rather than you say, you are too clingy, what's happening with you? What is it? What is happening? I don't understand you. When you see a change, your child is communicating something with you. And it's your responsibility as a parent to decode that. It's your responsibility as a parent to try as much as possible to understand that behavior, to understand that, cry for help, right? It's a cry for help for some children as well, that I need help, but there's some things, children cannot necessarily say, oh, I'm frustrated. Even sometimes your teenage children cannot say, oh, I'm just feeling overwhelmed, because they might not even be able to identify what is wrong with them, but they just know something is wrong somewhere. And, for some children is withdrawal, and some children is just outright, they start to like misbehave, or they're not listening. They just start to overreact. So as a parent, pause and reflect. And you can do that by writing down to track to see, okay, when did this happen, right? And see, okay, it started to happen. What are the changes that you've noticed? Was there any sort of transition that happened around that point in time? You want to note that down. Then the tip 2 is there always, you want to check if there's some 3 major changes that usually happen in children's lives, right? That usually would have an impact in their lives. So you want to see, the 3 things that usually happen is that, was there, some sort of change in your child's sleep pattern, right? So for some children, if they're not getting enough sleep, there's a problem, right? For some children, maybe they're not sleeping late, unlike before. It's an issue sometimes. So you want to check these 3 major changes that usually impact children's lives. That is the sleep. Then maybe, was there a transition? So when we say transition, it might be, okay, you moved the house, you moved school, something like that. Or maybe the child's schedule. Sometimes maybe you reorganize your child's schedule as well, or you introduced a new, let's say, activity, something like that. So those are the things you also want to start to see. And the third one is, I've mentioned tip 2, that you have to take notice of 3 major changes that can impact your children's life. And that is the sleep, transition, and attention. So for some children, maybe you had, let's say, you had a first child before and you now have a second baby. It usually affects some children that you start to see the child change as well. So you also want to see, was there, some sort of, lack of attention for your child? Is your attention, for some of you that just had a new baby, is the attention going into, to the new baby, and you've left the, the older one or the older children behind, something like that? Or attention in the sense that maybe you got busier, especially for we busy parents. Maybe you just got busier and you had to travel more, or you need to do something. You need to make observations of those 3 major changes that can impact a child's behavior. And the final tip 3, is that, track in the, for 3 to 5 days to see, okay, in the past, what is happening? Is it a one-off thing? Is it 2 days thing? I usually say, when you're saying that your child has changed, it's not something that you would say, oh, your child has changed, in 1 or 2 days. You want to track it over a period of time. Usually from 3 to 5 days, you want to track it. And when you're tracking it, you start to take note, right? Rather than you reacting, you start to take note that, okay, this day 1, this is what has happened. This is how, you notice that something is happening with your child. Okay, this is, and you track it over a period of time. How is this child reacting? So even if you're trying to prefer solution, right, you also want to track what you're trying to do as a parent as well. Okay, based off the fact that your child is feeling clingy, what are you doing as a parent? How are you responding to that child as well? What solutions have you preferred? As your solutions worked? Have they not worked? So many things like that. You track it and write it down over a period of time. Trust me, by the time you are doing that, you are able to identify if something is working and if it's not working, or why it's happening or why it's not happening. So I hope obviously you've been able to at least get some insight into this. And if you still need obviously support, please comment maybe clarity, or you send a DM to just comment clarity or DM clarity, and I would share a resource that I have that can also help you, give you more insight as to how to decode these behaviors, whether it's a cry for help, how to decode it, how to help the child. And it is not only when it can be in every area of the child's life. It can be in terms of changes in their sleep pattern, changes in their behavior. Maybe a child that is calm is no longer calm. A child that listens is no longer listening. A child that, is very outgoing is no longer outgoing. A child that is playful is just now so reserved. So if you need support, just, send me a DM clarity, or send, if you're watching the replay, you can comment clarity as well, and I'll be able to share a resource that I've prepared and I've put together that can give you more insight and more solutions, solutions to drive this change, and getting your child better as well. So thank you everyone for joining. I do appreciate your time. So we see again tomorrow. This series continue till at least till we think it's time to stop. But I'm just doing this series so that at least for the parents that are reaching out to say, what, we need help, this, that, and what I'm preferring now is that many times we just don't understand our children, and that's why we might get frustrated or overwhelmed sometimes. But there's always a solution if you look through, the events that is happening, which sometimes I call data. Like if you look through your daily activities, you'll be able to identify over a period of time what is actually wrong with your child, where that change has happened, and what you can do as a parent to help your child. Like I said, if there's a sudden change in a child's behavior, trust me, is either the child is communicating with you, or the child is saying, help me, it's a cry for help, I need help. And I hope you've benefited and found this video helpful. If you're watching the replay as well, let me know in the comments to say, replay, thank you, I got value. And if you need further support, just put in the comment there to say clarity, and I will be able to share the resources that can help you, give you more insight as to how to support your child.